What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For all of us who work in the trades, working out of work vans, trailers, box trucks, etc., getting a good van shelving system is worth so much money, and just it's so nice to work out of. So I've designed a handful of vans and trailers now. I've learned a lot about how to get a good shelving system in a work vehicle. So I want to share the things that I've learned in this video about how to go about designing a system that works really well and is really efficient, not just for storing your tools and organizing them, but creating kits and matching up to your different toolbox styles and things like that. Lots of value in this video to come. Let's dig right into it. So if you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you are in the process of setting up a new tool trailer, work van, or whatever. And you're gonna have to face the question of how much time investment do I put into getting this thing fit out well and organized? How much of my time do I invest? How much of my money do I invest in the shelving? Take a little bit of time and add up whatever your billable rate is and how much time a good setup will save you each day. And let's say you lose an hour a day by not having the consumables you need, or looking for this tool or that tool deployment, putting tools away. Throw it 80 bucks an hour on it. Let's multiply 80 bucks an hour times 5 days a week times 50 weeks a year. That's 20 grand a year that just 1 hour a day costs you. So is it worth the investment to spend some time up front and properly outfit a vehicle? Yes. At 1 hour a day, that's a $100,000 either gain or loss over a 5-year period. So that's why it's worth taking the time and doing it really well. Just real quick, hitting on the question of should you buy new versus old? That's a very personal question. You got to answer that for yourself. One of the reasons that I buy new is because I want to run the vehicle for a long time, like 10 years. And the initial time investment up front to set up a work van really well is huge. It takes a significant amount of time to do it right. And I don't want to be redoing that every 2 or 3 years. So that's a small reason, one of the many reasons that I opt to go new. It works for me, but I paid cash for it. I don't take out loans on vehicles, so keep that in mind. Don't think that you have got to go buy a brand new work vehicle to be relevant in the trades. Let's talk about how to design your work van shelving. The biggest tip that I can give you is make your shelving system modular and adaptable for future changes. And what I mean by that is your tools are going to change, toolbox sizes are going to change, and you're going to want to easily be able to adjust things and move them around accordingly as your workflow changes. So, for example, right here, if I want to say move this shelf down, I can easily do that because it's just got pocket hole screws. I can move that down. If I want to accommodate a wider section of tools here, I can easily do that by removing this shelf with just pocket hole screws, and then this vertical piece is pocket hole screwed into this. It doesn't take long to move things around, and I've had to do that over the years many times. So you don't want to lock yourself into a rigid construction method that isn't easy to change over time. Talking a little bit about modular, what do I mean by that? Figuring out what your toolbox sizes are and then being able to plug and play in different places is key. So for example, here, these are 24 inches wide here, same thing over here. So if I decide I want to move this pack out over to the other side, I can just lift it and put it in the other side. Same thing, if I want to move these sustainers over here, I can put those there. I can flip this down if I want. I can put this here. And so you can see it's a well thought out system where different things will fit in different places. Let's talk a little bit about your workflow. Your workflow is going to be a huge factor in how you design your van shelving. At least it should be. One of the biggest mistakes that I've made in the past whenever I've outfitted my tool trailer for tools was I was more focused on how can I neatly organize all these tools in the tool trailer or in the work van. That is not how you want to think about it. You want to think about how do I work with my tools and how can I organize them most efficiently so that they'll work well with my workflow. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I have to stop and do a final punch list on a job. I want to have certain kits where my tools are together on that kit so that I can simply roll it out and go and do that final. Or for example, if I'm going to be trimming a house, I take a lot of my tools out, but this stack right here would have the majority of the trim tools that I need. So I could simply roll that out. Different things, for example here, this is my consumables stack. So whenever I'm on a job, I can have all of my consumables, my glues, my caulks, and things like that on this stack. And it's also crucial because in the winter, I need to be able to remove this and store it inside so that the stuff doesn't freeze. So I want to have all of the freezable consumables on one stack. Thinking through things like that is crucial. You don't just want to take all of your tools and randomly scatter them all over the place in your work vehicle. That's the worst thing you can do. You want to keep them together in kits that make sense with your workflow. Another key question to ask as you think through your design is, do you work out of a job site or do you work out of your vehicle more? And what I mean by that is sometimes if you're doing service work like a plumber, you might just be going to your vehicle and grabbing one or two tools. Whereas my workflow with trimming new homes, I'm working inside the home, so I want to take all of my tools and be able to transport them inside the house. So that's a big consideration. Guys who work out of their vehicle tend to have it more where they can just grab one tool and go versus someone like myself who has them more in boxes. Now I will say Milwaukee changed the game whenever they came out with their drawer pack-out system because it allows me to do both of those things with one modular system. So as you see here, I keep these tool stacks and these are all drawer units. What that allows me to do is work out of my van or out of the job site. So if I need to just come in and grab a nail gun, I can come right over here, pull the drawer out and get the nail gun. In the same way, if I'm starting a new trim job and I want to deploy all my tools really quickly, I'll pull this stack out, put it on my dolly and roll it into the job site. And then I can work out of the job site with that same ease. So thinking through things like that are crucial questions. Another key question is, do you use a lot of consumable parts? So if you're a plumber and you have a lot of pipe fittings and things like that, your work van design is going to look a lot different than mine because I don't need a lot of inventory items. I don't need a lot of open shelvings with different parts and pieces and stuff like that. Another key question is, do you prefer toolboxes or do you prefer to be able to see everything? Based off of what you see here, I'm much more of a toolbox guy. I know where my stuff is at, and that's kind of how I like to work. I had a Polk design tool trailer in the past. That was just a horrible design for me. Basically, everything was open and you just put each individual tool into its slot. It wasn't efficient at all for me. I only keep tools that I use rarely in places like this to grab and go. The stuff that I use most commonly, I like to have in toolboxes because I like to be able to transport those onto the job site. So we've thought through our workflow. It's time to start basically designing our shelving. We're going to design our spacing. So how do we start doing that? The first thing that you want to do is look at your largest tools and figure out where you're going to put your largest tools. If you're at the stage where you have an empty van or empty tool trailer, it works great to just basically roll in your largest tools and just kind of position them around your work van and see how everything is going to fit. And that can give you a good idea of where to start laying out your vertical pieces. Now, to determine basically the spacing between, you got to come up with a number that works for your tools, but also your toolbox system. And here with the Milwaukee Packout, the golden number that I have found for myself is a 24-inch space between my vertical partitions. Almost all of the spaces in this van are 24 inches. So as for me, as I start my design, my two largest tools in large size and width is my miter saw, 12-inch sliding miter saw, and my table saw here. So these two I stack on top of each other because they're the widest, and it just works out pretty well that way. The other key consideration that is huge for me is I keep everything on wheels. So I use this aluminum ramp I install it here on the back of my work vehicle, and I wheel my stuff on and off. It takes the pressure off of my shoulders carrying these heavy boxes, and it's also really fast to move a lot of tools around quickly. So I reserve every bit of real estate on the floor I can to be able to wheel boxes in and out. So here my table saw is on wheels, charging station, microwave is on wheels. I've got another area over here. This is on wheels. My consumables, I do have to lift off because it's on the wheel well, but after that, it's on wheels as well. And then my two large stacks of pack out over here, on wheels and on wheels. So for me, I like to design everything around the wheel wells and keep everything on either dollies, casters, wheels, whatever you want to call it, so that I can roll things in and out of the van. Another really big decision in the design process that you want to figure out at the beginning of this process is what toolbox storage platforms you're going to use. As you see here, I've got Festool Sustainers and Milwaukee Packouts. I like to use a 2 toolbox platform system because the Packouts are really big. They take up a lot of space. The Sustainers, on the other hand, are much more small and compact. They don't have a ton of options and they're a bit overpriced, but I've found they work really well for me to create those smaller kits where I don't want a big Milwaukee Packout box. So as you see here, I've designed with my 24-inch space, I can have 2 Festool Sustainers turned the long ways and inserted here. So it works really well for me. You know, again, think modular. Being able to move things around however you need is really key. So I'm super happy with the system that I have now. Another key thing to look at whenever you're starting your design process is the wheel wells. As I've already said, I like to keep everything I can on wheels, but obviously where your wheel wells are at, you're not going to be able to roll stuff up and put it against the walls. So you'll notice with this design, I don't have anything on wheels in this area. The way I've treated the wheel wells on all the vehicles I've had in the past is I just box out the wheel wells underneath, and then I'll use that area for things that fit in that space. Sawhorses, sledgehammers, tripods, clamps, things like that. Those are the types of things I tend to put down in this area, but you got to keep that in mind as you start your design. The next thing we need to consider is how deep and how wide we're going to make our openings. I talked a little bit about the width already, accommodating for your most common toolboxes and tools, but then what about the depth? How deep do you make your shelving? I think, again, you start out by matching it to your deepest tools. So on this side, the way that I determined the depth of my shelving was basically to work with the packouts, but then also my larger tool. And that's even with my miter saw. The table saw is unfortunately a little bit deeper, so it sticks out past, but I wasn't going to make the entire wall of shelving deeper. Just the bottom of this side is 18 inches. Now, you also have to ask, are you going to make your depth the same on both sides of the van or your work trailer? I say no. I think you want to have one side deeper and then focus on keeping your deeper tools on one side of the van. And then I think you want to have one side that is a little bit narrower in depth and keep those tools on the other side of the van. That way you maximize your alley space in through the center here. Now, as you see, I bottom on this side. On this side over here, I start out 16 inches wide. That number I established back when I did my first van, and the reason that I came up with that is because if I plumbed down, because keep in mind, the sides of your van curve up. So the way I came up with that number is I looked at where I could fit a Festool sustainer at the top and basically plumbed all the way down from there and came up with 16. Now I don't really use it that way, but I found the 16 number still works well. I can basically push a pack out all the way up against the wall, and at 16 inches it comes out flush right here. So that number has worked really well for me. 16 deep on the base over here, 18 deep on the base over here. You guys who follow along on Instagram have seen why this alley space in the center is so crucial for me. I build cabinets, built-ins in my shop here, and then I transport them to the job site in this van. So I like to have absolutely as much space as possible down through this center section. Every inch matters. You don't want to waste any space, but this is pretty comfortable for me. Again, these dimensions give me a pretty nice area to be able to walk around, take boxes on and off, get access to tools, and then also a nice section of space to transport whatever I need to down the center as well. At the beginning of your design process, you really want to think about what tools you have that you want to store that are unusual size. So like I have this multi-position ladder, my dolly right here. I've also got my aluminum walk plank here that I use to roll stuff on and off the van, sawhorses, you know, tool bag, levels. These are all odd shaped things that you kind of just have to find those spaces for. Another thing that I love with the high roof vans is I'm 5'10". I can put ladders on the ceiling and still walk around comfortably underneath. So you want to use the ceiling too if you have that option. I also keep tracks for my track saws up on the ceiling as well. I don't have them installed yet, but brooms I also fasten up on the ceiling. So those weird size things, you've got to get really creative with fitting those in. Here on the back side of the van, this is where I like to keep the cords and hoses, 3-ways. Another area over here for odd shaped stuff. This is where I've been keeping my miter saw stand. Just kind of pop that on. And then there's another area here I could potentially store something as well. So as you go through this whole design process, start with your big tools, figure out what widths are going to work best for you, and keep basically installing some shelves, put the tools in, and as you get to the end of the process, you'll find that you've got those small random tools left over, but you'll also find that you have little cracks and crevices for certain things like here. I don't use a framing nailer very often, but I still want to have it on the van. Well, I had a small space up above this whole section, so I made a nice little narrow space for my framing nailer and nails. Things like that, you just kind of fill in the cracks once you get to the end. But I hope this is helpful for you guys who are trying to design your work vehicle. It's worth taking the time to do it well. It's an investment that will pay you dividends big time as you work and use that vehicle for years to come. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. Stay tuned for the next video where I'll show you actually how to go about building the shelves themselves and kind of the why that I do it the way I do it. just some tips and tricks along the way. So we'll see you on that video. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.